Hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you all like it, please like and subscribe, and hope you all enjoy it. Have a great rest of the day.
Hey y'all, hope you all are having a good day today. Just checking in here at Ramsour's Mill. This is actually the Reinhardt house that is on the particular site where the Battle of Ramsour's Mill took place. Just wanted to check in here. Gonna do a small little battlefield tour and talk and tell you a little bit about the battle. But anyways, this is actually where the battle took place on June 20th of 1780. What you see here today is actually obviously a little different than what you would have seen at that time, from when the battle occurred. You would not have seen the elementary school that is just past these trees here, and of course, on top of the hill there, and of course you surely wouldn't have seen that battlefield or that football field over there. You wouldn't have seen that football field there, and you wouldn't have seen the drain and all that stuff. Just obviously you wouldn't have seen quite a few things. But what you would have seen is this hill here, this slight incline and all that stuff. You would have seen that. And also, you would have very likely have seen a mill pond right where this football field is here. Among other little things and stuff. Of course, you also would have seen a mill, which is on the far, that would have been on the creek, which is just over there. I'll go over there in a little bit and just show y'all. But you would have seen those kinds of things. So what I'm going to do today is touch a little bit about the Battle of Ramsour's Mill. But of course, before I do that, though, I am going to talk a little bit about what led up to the battle. And speaking of which, people will often call it a skirmish. Some will call it a battle, some will call it a skirmish, but I guess it all just depends on how you kind of look at it. Obviously, it's because of I guess when you compare it to battles like Cowpens or the Battle of Cowpens or the Battle of Kings Mountain or things like that, of course it's going to be considered a skirmish. But I guess to others it is considered a battle, just because of its significance and all that sorts. But nonetheless, it all just depends on how you look at it, But either way. After the Revolutionary War had been going on for a few years in the northern colonies, and obviously it could be considered a stalemate at that point, the British actually decided to make another attempt at bringing the war to the southern colonies for a change again. And the reasoning behind it was that they felt that the loyalist support, down in the southern colonies was a very big factor in, there was a large loyalist population down here, and they felt that could be a helping factor. So, they felt that could help help their cause. And they felt that the loyalists could offer logistical support as well as resupplying with additional troops and just among other little things, So they felt that by securing their loyalist support in the South, that they could then proceed farther and farther north, eventually bringing the colonies back under the Crown's full control. And of course, after capturing Charleston, South Carolina on May 12th, 1780, General Cornwallis started making plans to go further and further north. Now, on May 29th, Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton unfortunately defeated the Patriot forces at Waxhaw, which I think was about 40 miles south of Charlotte, North Carolina. And for those who know, Tarleton wasn't very well liked. Not because he was incapable, but actually because of how ruthless and he was in battle. I guess you could say that he was a little over the top, depending on who you ask. And by the way, for those that don't know, these are actually millstones right here. As I haven't mentioned yet, but this was actually a site, as mentioned before. There was a mill down there, just down this little pathway here through the trees that was on the river here, or the little river, creek, whatever, over yonder there. At which point we will also go look at that for a half second or two and kind of scope it out a little bit. Anyways, in response to all this with what was going on at that particular time, General Griffith Rutherford sent troops on June 3rd, you know, for the North Carolina Patriot Militia to gather. And anyway, by June 12th, around, I'd like to say about 800 men had assembled, including about 65 cavalry. And on June 14th, he had received intelligence that the Loyalists were gathering in Lincoln, or Lincoln County at that time, and sent orders to Colonel Francis Locke in Rowan County, and of course Major David Wilson in Mecklenburg County, and Captain Falls in Brandon to raise a contingent of men to face the Loyalists in Lincoln County. So, at this point, with all of this going on, Lieutenant Colonel John Moore of Lincoln County, who was a Loyalist, sent a call for Loyalists in the area to assemble after being told by General Cornwallis, you know, to not assemble until Cornwallis was ready to come North Carolina, you know, to North Carolina. So pretty much went against his orders and gathered anyways. Soon after, Major Welch of Hamilton's North Carolina Volunteers, later known as the Royal North Carolina Regiment, on June 10th, the Loyalists actually assembled on Indian Creek, which is about 7 miles west of Ramsour's mill. Interestingly, Moore and Welch knew that the Patriots who were commanded by Rutherford were in Mecklenburg County, and that others who were under Major Joseph McDowell operated in Lincoln County. Moore's plan was to join Cornwallis's army in South Carolina. Anyways, within a couple days, of course, they led their Loyalist troops to Ramsour's mill and set up camp there, just about 300 yards east of the actual mill, on some land that was owned by Christian Reinhardt, who, by the way, was actually treated very unfairly by the British. More on that later in a later video. But by, you know, and of course by June 19th, they had approximately about 1,400 Loyalists encamped on the top of the hill over there. The majority of these men were farmers or had some sort of trade, and just about 3/4 of those men, maybe actually had a firelock. So after finding out that the Loyalists had gathered, they decided to march, or Rutherford decided to march from Charlotte to Tuckasegee Ford on the Catawba River. Locke was able to assemble about 400 men on Mountain Creek, which was about 16 miles northeast of here, Ramsour's mill. And of course, Rutherford had sent orders for Locke to meet him at Colonel Joseph Dickinson's plantation, which was approximately 3 miles from the Tuckasegee Ford. And unfortunately, Locke never received that message, unfortunately. So with that being said, he decided to move against the Loyalists that were currently at Ramsour's mill. And on late June 19th, Locke's forces began the overnight trek undetected. So now, on to the foggy morning of June 20th, 1780. The Patriot captains McDowell and Falls led their cavalry along the Tuckasegee Road toward where the Loyalists were camped. The horsemen advanced to within about 300 yards, I think, of the Loyalists encamped before being discovered. So, of course, this obviously surprised the sleeping soldiers, and the Loyalists quickly organized and fired back, which caused the Patriots on horseback to fall back. So just imagine this whole area that you see here being extremely foggy, and you probably couldn't really see much more than 30, 40, 50 yards, maybe where that tree line was, or maybe even just a little bit further than that, maybe, hardly. In reports, after in some reports, it was actually said it was foggier than what most had seen at that time, up to that current point. So I'd imagine that would be pretty foggy. So anyway, seeing the effect of the initial volley, the Loyalists proceeded to advance down the hill, as the cavalry returned to the fight with the infantry not very far behind. The Loyalists then proceeded to drive the Patriots back down the hill, or the Loyalists, so the Loyalists pretty much drove the Patriots back down the hill. And of course, after reorganizing themselves, the Patriots then proceeded to advance again, which actually pushed the Loyalists back even further over the crest. So shortly after that, the more Patriots advanced toward the Loyalist camp from the south. Now, at this point, the fighting was actually getting pretty intense. As some of you all know, the Loyalists and Patriot militia wore similar attire, with small but noticeable differences. So it was sometimes hard to figure out who was who. And it being this late in the battle, one can only imagine everything just being all muddied up, and as far as people running around at that point, it's like, so it was pretty much just kind of a disaster, as far as who was who and all that stuff. And at this point in the battle, the amount of ammunition that each side had was actually pretty low. So this caused a lot of soldiers to resort to using hand-to-hand combat, and also using their guns as clubs. So anyways, the Patriots, who were under Captain Hardin, arrived and positioned his men behind the fence and fired. Just about over yonder over there. So anyways, taking fire from both sides at the same time, the Loyalists again fell back and then broke and fled. Anyways, after topping the hill, the Patriots saw the Loyalists retreating over Clark's Creek and assumed that the Loyalists would actually regroup and attack again. So the Patriots formed a new line of battle. However, they were only able to muster about 110 men at that point. Just everything just being as it was at that time, that was just what ended up happening. Now, outnumbered, Locke dispatched 2 officers to try to find Rutherford and urge him to hasten the battle. The Loyalists then retreated to between Clark's Creek and the South Fork River. Of course, there they actually hung up a white sheet and sent men to negotiate the surrender. But of course, it was only a ruse, but it allowed enough time for the remaining Loyalists to spread out across the backcountry. So as you all can see, it was actually a very consequential fight that ensured that the Loyalists' cause and support in North Carolina remained low and never became a problem again as Cornwallis advanced north. So of course, this was the linchpin of the entire British Southern strategy, which drastically lowered the chances of the British winning at this point. So anyways, some interesting things to really consider at this point is that the Loyalists had about 1,300 to 1,400 men, while the Patriots had a little over 400 men. Of course, this was actually during the time of actual battle. Of course, that was during the initial battle. So after the battle, when Rutherford, there was actually additional men had arrived, the amount of Patriots, the Patriot militia, was increased by a significant portion to relatively comparable numbers. The casualties were roughly the same for both sides as well. And that is what made the battle so interesting, is that the men on both sides pretty much knew each other. It was pretty much brother against brother, and cousins and cousins, and it was just kind of a disaster. People were kind of, it wasn't some little thing to where a contingent of men came from the backcountry in Tennessee and came down to someplace in Georgia and had a squabble with a contingent of men down there. So it was just more than that. It was local people against people that they knew very well, which kind of made this whole situation that much more unfortunate, you know. So anyways, that was pretty much that deal. Well, as they can say, here we go, down to the mill. So anyways, this is actually the creek right here that the Loyalists had also retreated over. And by the way, as mentioned, this was the same creek that the mill was on. And that football field that I showed you all earlier, that was where the mill pond was. And of course, right by that tree right there, don't know if you all can see it through the camera, but there's some that may be some remnants of the mill, or what's left of all this whole thing. And of course, with time, the river kind of, you know, the creek kind of moved a little bit, the water levels changed and all that stuff. So as you can imagine, as mentioned, things are a little bit different. But that's pretty much the whole ordeal with this. So that's pretty much the deal. But as mentioned, for those that have an interest at coming to this historic site, which by the way I would highly recommend, it's a little off the beaten path, definitely a place you want to visit if this is kind of your interest. The address, it's kind of a little iffy, but if you type in online, you can go on to Lincoln County Historical Society, and there'll be some information as far as the best location, but it's literally right across the street from Battleground Elementary, so you could always use that as a pinpoint as to where to go as far as getting here, or you could give the Lincoln County Historical Society a call to get better, or to get a better address and all that sorts. I'd provide one here, but on the video, but unfortunately it's kind of an iffy address. But anyways, as mentioned, if you just go online, go to Lincoln County Historical Society, that'd be your best bet. Anyways, I surely hope that you all liked this video. If you all did, please check out, or please like and subscribe to the video. And also, if you all can, go to the Our Living History description for the channel, where we will have a link for the private group, the private Facebook group, as well as the Our Living History page, both of which I would highly recommend you joining on and checking out. We have all kinds of things going on those, and of course check out the rest of our videos on the channel as well. We try to keep it fun, but anyways, have a great rest of the day, and hope you all enjoyed the video.